What's up, everybody? Let's dive into one of the big talking points that came up earlier today on SportsCenter. The Lakers' search for help on the wing, specifically a true 3-and-D option. The panel opened by pointing out the obvious. Someone like Andrew Wiggins would be the dream target. He checks every box: size, length, defensive versatility, scoring punch. But then, the big question: are the Lakers really going to put together the kind of package it would take to land a player of Wiggins' caliber? The consensus was probably not. Now, looking at this roster, the offensive firepower is undeniable. Between LeBron, Luka, and the rest of the core, points won't be a problem. The real conversation is on the defensive end. Are the concerns legitimate, or have they been exaggerated? The analysts believe it's somewhere in the middle. This team won't be an elite top 5 defense, but they could settle comfortably in that 12-15 range over the course of the season, which is good enough to win a lot of games if the offense is clicking. They've got some strong defensive pieces already. Jared Vanderbilt should be back healthy, and we know LeBron can lock in when it matters, especially now that Luka can carry more of the offensive load. DeAndre Ayton has made it clear he wants to become a stronger rim protector. Marcus Smart brings grit and switchability, and Gabe Vincent, now with a clean bill of health, adds another layer on the perimeter. Even Jake LaRavia, who earned a B+ defensive grade last year, has been working to push that into the A range, telling reporters this summer that defense was his biggest focus in the offseason. Still, the feeling is the Lakers could use one more versatile, switch-everything defender, someone who can guard multiple spots and fit seamlessly with their stars. One name that came up: Kyle Anderson, now with the Utah Jazz. He's 6'9", smart, and can guard 1 through 5. His contract, $9.2 million this season and $9.6 million next, lines up perfectly with the Lakers' plan to maintain flexibility under the new CBA. And because it's an expiring next year, it could also serve as valuable trade ballast down the road. From a roster-building perspective, the fit is interesting. If you package a deal right, say, moving a contract like Gabe Vincent's and a young piece, you could not only bring in Anderson, but also open up a roster spot and some extra salary space to sign another veteran later in the year. That kind of move could strengthen the rotation without jeopardizing future flexibility. Of course, the conversation didn't stop there. There was also speculation about a bigger, more complex deal that could bring in Anderson plus another contributor. Some fans have tossed around the idea of chasing Lauri Markkanen, but the table felt his price tag under the new CBA makes him overpaid for what he actually brings. Yes, he's tall, can shoot over defenders, and fits the mold of a modern scoring forward. But if you're paying him like a number 1 option when he's really more of a third piece, you're probably better off allocating those assets elsewhere. Bottom line, Anderson might not be a headline-grabbing addition, but in terms of cost, contract structure, and two-way ability, he could quietly be one of the most practical targets the Lakers explore between now and the trade deadline. And speaking of versatility, Kyle Anderson checks a lot of those boxes, even if his game isn't built around the 3-ball. Yes, there was that one season where he hit 41% from deep, but that was on barely more than 1 attempt per game, so it's not really a weapon you count on every night. That said, he's the definition of a Swiss Army knife. He's the kind of player who can defend multiple positions, crash the glass, make the right pass, and even initiate offense when you need a secondary playmaker on the floor. Think of him as that Boris Diaw type, for those who remember. A player you can plug in almost anywhere in the lineup and trust to keep the flow of the game intact. At 6'9", he's got the length to disrupt passing lane and the size to battle bigger bodies inside. In certain lineups, you could even slide him into a small ball center role, where his mobility and court vision become real assets. He's not going to light up the scoreboard, but he can be the connective tissue that makes everyone else's job easier. Physically, he brings plenty to the table: 235 pounds, strong frame, long arms, all of which translate into the kind of defensive presence the Lakers can use. And the best part? He wouldn't require a big asset haul to get. Nobody's giving up a first-round pick here, but if moving someone like Dalton Knecht helps free up a bit of cap space while bringing in Anderson's contract. That's the type of move that keeps your flexibility intact. Anderson turns 32 in late September, so he's in that sweet spot, experienced enough to know his role, but not at the stage where his game is falling off a cliff. His deal runs through next season, meaning you're not locked into some long-term commitment until he's pushing his late 30s. If for whatever reason it doesn't work out, that expiring deal is still a tradable asset down the line. You're not asking him to be a starter or carry the scoring load. You're asking him to come off the bench, stabilize the rotation, and give you high IQ, switchable defense. You could run him as a backup 4, pair him with another long defender like Jared Vanderbilt, and suddenly you've got the kind of lineup that can switch 1 through 5 and match up with just about anyone. Picture a unit with Luka Doncic orchestrating, Marcus Smart locking down the perimeter, Vanderbilt and Anderson covering every angle defensively, and a rim-protecting big like DeAndre Ayton anchoring the paint. That's the kind of versatility head coach J.J. Redick could lean on all season, and the numbers back up his reliability. Last season, splitting time between Golden State and Miami, Anderson suited up for 61 games, and that's actually below his usual mark. Before that, you're looking at 79, 69, 69, 69, and 67 games in the previous year. That's roughly 69 games a year on average. Dependable availability in today's NBA. His minutes were down last year at about 16 per game, but he still shot 47% from the field. From 3, he was at 36% on just over 1 attempt per night. Again, not high volume, but enough to keep defenses honest. If you go back to his first season in Minnesota, he shot that career-best 41% from deep, and while the attempts weren't high, it showed that in the right situations, he can knock them down. His most three-point attempts in a season came in 2020-21 with Minnesota, when he averaged 4 per game and still hit 36%. So no, he's not spacing the floor like a pure shooter. But in a Lakers system that would lean more on his defense, playmaking, and versatility, the lack of volume from deep isn't a deal-breaker. If Anderson can hover around that 36-37% mark from beyond the arc, even on modest volume, that's more than enough to make his skill set work in Los Angeles. You're not bringing him in to be a high-volume shooter. You're bringing him in for everything else he does. At league average efficiency from deep on roughly 4 attempts per game, his spacing would be sufficient to keep defenses honest, especially when paired with his defensive versatility. Inside the arc, Anderson has been steady as well. Last season, he hit nearly 49% from the field overall, with an effective field goal percentage of 47.2%. His free throw shooting came in at 71% on just under 2 attempts per night. On the glass, he averaged 3.5 rebounds to go along with 5 assists, 1 steal, half a block, and about 6 points per game. Not eye-popping, but exactly the kind of across-the-board contributions you expect from a role player who impacts the game in subtle ways. When you project those numbers out to a per 36-minute pace, the production starts to look more substantial. Roughly 13 points, 7.5 rebounds, 5 assists, 1.5 steals, and 1.5 blocks. That's the profile of a player who doesn't just fill minutes, he influences multiple phases of the game. Interestingly, his stint with Golden State last year was more efficient than his time in Miami. With the Warriors, Anderson shot 51.7% from 2-point range and nearly 37% from deep on 1.5 attempts per game. It's a small sample, but it reinforces the idea that in the right role, he can give you just enough shooting to complement his defensive skill set. Ultimately, Anderson offers that Swiss Army knife package coaches love. He can guard multiple positions, initiate offense from the post or the perimeter, and adapt to whatever the game plan requires on a given night. On a Lakers team that's aiming for more defensive switchability under J.J. Redick, he fits like a glove. The key would be adding him without overpaying. But if the numbers work and the opportunity presents itself, it's exactly the kind of under-the-radar move that can solidify a rotation for a playoff run.